Welcome back. This is Caitlin from grassfedgirl.com. I'm so excited you're here today. We have a great interview. It's with Dr. Brittany McGetrick. She's here with us. She is a chiropractor and a registered dietitian, and she is somebody who lives here in Nashville. Can you believe it? So, and I know she is a big proponent of the carnivore diet. So she's going to tell us all about her journey with health and everything. Welcome, Dr. Brittany.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So, how did you get interested in health in general? And then how did you get started with carnivore?
Yeah, so I've always been pretty interested in health. I knew from a young age that I wanted to go into nutrition of some sort when I got older. I wanted to be a doctor when I was younger, but I was scared of needles and blood. So I just kind of pushed that off, became a dietitian, and then realized I could be a chiropractor. That's a doctor that doesn't have to deal with needles and blood. So that was pretty great. So, I mean, really from like the time I was a teenager, I was always interested in health and the human body, and I would read like women's health magazines and all of that stuff. So I went straight into nutrition in my undergraduate for college. But I didn't get into carnivore until 2018, which was, I was in chiropractic school and I had already been a dietitian for 2 or 3 years before I even heard of carnivore. So I got into it from the Joe Rogan podcast with Dr. Baker, where I feel like a lot of people probably heard about it from. That's when it started to get more and more popular. So I had a buddy of mine heard the podcast, shared it with me, and he was going to do it World Carnivore Month for January in 2018. I was like, I don't know. That sounds a little weird and crazy. But then I remember one night I had a dinner of like lamb shanks and Brussels sprouts, which I was eating them just because I felt like, I had to eat them before they went bad because I had them in my fridge, which was the case for myself eating a lot of vegetables throughout my life. I just ate them because I thought I had to. So I ate that meal and then I went and taught yoga, and I was so gassy the whole time teaching yoga. And so I was like, all right, I'm convinced. Fine, let's do it. So I did it for the month of January in 2018 and loved it and never looked back.
Okay, so that was longer. So that's almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Close to 2.5 years, huh?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
So did you have any health issues that made you do that, or?
Well, let me back up a little bit. So I used to be a vegetarian. So I had some health issues that led me back to meat. So when I was 19, I read a book that talked about the meatpacking industry and just like how terrible eating meat was, and all of the things. Sorry, my dog's throwing a bone around. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but I have a lab down here. He gets a little rowdy sometimes, but he should calm down. So I read a book when I was 19 that talked about, it was basically telling you to go vegan. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so gross. Like all these things it's saying about meat. So I went vegan for about a year, but I really liked cheese and ice cream. So then I was vegetarian. I kind of added some dairy back in. But I stayed vegetarian for about 6 years total. So it was 1 year vegan, 5 years vegetarian. And so this was in probably 2016. I was having chronic wrist inflammation, wrist problems. And I was in chiropractic school at the time. So I'd get my wrist adjusted. I would get my spine adjusted. It would help a little bit, but my wrists were still just so inflamed and painful. And I couldn't do yoga anymore. It hurt to put any pressure on them. And so in the course of chiropractic school, you shadow a lot of doctors. So I was shadowing a doctor who had this theory that chronic wrist inflammation or injuries were due to a zinc deficiency in the diet. And I kind of wrote it off the first time I heard it. I was like, that's silly. Like, why would it just be your wrist? Why wouldn't it be, all of the joints of your body? Like, whatever. And then a few months went by. We were shadowing him again. That conversation came up again. And my wrists at the time were terrible. I was not able to do yoga. And so I was like, all right, I don't really understand it, but I'm just going to give it a try. So from being vegetarian for 6 years, I added red meat back into my diet because red meat is one of the best sources of zinc. So I added red meat back in, started eating it every day at lunch, and my wrists got so much better. They've not been a problem since. So So I did that for a couple of years. So that was probably, I think it was like 2016, 2017. And I didn't have any issues. A lot of people, I feel like, wonder or are curious, like, oh, if you've been vegetarian for so long, are you gonna have problems when you put meat back in your diet? And I didn't at all. My body took to eating meat again just fine. So I started eating meat again. I would say my diet was probably kind of like a paleo diet because I had taken gluten out of my diet for other reasons as well. But it's definitely very high carbohydrate. I'm a sugar fiend. So it's very high carb, but paleo and gluten-free. And so that is the diet that I then transitioned to coming into carnivore. So I had already taken care of my wrist problems, my inflammation in my wrist, just going from vegetarian to meat eater. And then when I transitioned to carnivore, I also had more benefits to my health. So a few months prior to going carnivore, I had eczema that popped up in my armpit. And I had never in my life had eczema before. And so I was trying all the natural remedies. I was putting coconut oil on it, essential oils. I would put my armpit out in the sun because sun is really good for eczema. And things would help, but it never completely got rid of it. And it was really painful. You know, it's like hard to shave your armpits when you got eczema in there. Within 1 week of going carnivore, eczema was completely gone. Yeah, it was wild. Like totally gone, has never come back. It's never been an issue since. Yeah. I also gained about 10 pounds of muscle, which was good for my body. I wasn't coming to it like needing to lose weight. So I gained 10 pounds of just pure muscle, like good, solid, healthy weight. But I was not working out very much at the time. I was in a stage of my life where I was extremely busy, just didn't have the time to work out, but I was able to gain muscle. And now, being 2 years into it, it's so easy for me to maintain my weight. So I don't have to work out a whole bunch. That's one of the things I love. And I tell people about carnivore, I'm like, you don't have to spend 2 hours in the gym if you don't want to. Like if you're eating right, your activity is just for fun. It's just whatever you enjoy doing to move your body. I have steady energy levels throughout the day. I used to be like an insomniac after lunch. I would just fall asleep, anything I was doing after lunch. And now I, stay awake all day. It's great. Or insomniac, not insomniac, narcoleptic is what I was after lunch, where you just fall asleep all the time. Insomnia, you can't fall asleep.
I know it.
Yeah, got the two words mixed up. So I have steady energy levels throughout the day, and I don't have to be neurotic about having snacks with me all the time, which is so great. I used to always, be like, oh, do I have a granola bar or have this? Or, I can't leave the house for too many hours without having snacks on me, and I was eating high carb because you go through that roller coaster of being full and then being super hungry. And so now I, can just eat usually like twice a day and I'm solid. I'm just good to go.
So what does your typical meal and 2 meals look like?
So in the morning, so another interesting thing. So I had tried like intermittent fasting before when I was eating meat still, but sort of that high carb paleo. And I did not enjoy it. I would get a terrible headache by noon. Like I try to have my eating window, start at noon. I just did not feel good doing intermittent fasting. But since going carnivore, my body just sort of naturally has been able to move me more towards that lifestyle, which has been interesting. So typically I don't eat breakfast. I might have like a few pieces of bacon or something if I'm feeling hungry in the morning, but I do sort of like I call it like my carnivore bulletproof coffee, where I do a raw egg yolk and ghee and blend that up in my coffee. So that keeps me pretty full. So I'll do that for my morning coffee. And then for lunch, I'll typically have like a pound of ground beef. So I'll either just make ground beef on its own, and I might put a little bit of like Primal Kitchen steak sauce on it, or any sort of like low sugar sauces. Or I'll do like cowboy burgers. I love cowboy burgers from Whole Foods. It's ground beef, bacon, and cheese mixed in. Sometimes there's jalapenos, but I usually just pick those out. So I'll do like a couple of those with some eggs on top for lunch, and then dinner is typically a steak.
Okay, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are always like thinking we need all this variety, and we really don't.
Oh yeah, I will eat the same thing for, years. I could eat the same thing. which, yeah, because I'm not, I mean, I know you post like a bunch of good recipes and everything, and it seems like you're always experimenting with that stuff, which is great. But I honestly could just, like, I just keep it super simple.
Sorry.
It's okay. But yeah, I just keep it super simple and eat a lot of just like the same things. Like I have some recipes that I'll, play around with here and there, but you really don't have to be a super fancy chef to succeed on this diet.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly do that. We've been quarantined. It's like something to do, and
Yeah,
Instagram.
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I just like playing around with eggs, different kinds of eggs and stuff. So you don't have a dairy allergy or sensitivity?
No, I do pretty okay with dairy. I don't consume a lot of it though. Like I'll have cheese sometimes, but I don't really do milk or anything like that. Yeah, mostly just cheese because I'll make like carnivore nachos sometimes with like pork rinds and ground beef and like put cheese on top of there. I'll put cheese on like scrambled eggs sometimes, but I'm not too heavy into dairy.
Now, so you went to registered dietitian school first, and then you weren't satisfied and you wanted to become a chiropractor.
Yeah. So I became a dietitian and was very disillusioned with that world after I finished. It was all very clinical. A lot of dietitians work in hospital settings, and hospitals just make me depressed. I just get so sad when I walk into a hospital. It's not the place I want to be or spend most of the hours of my day. So once I became a dietitian, then I was working as a personal trainer and just kind of figuring out what my next steps were. And I mean, at the time, this was like 2014. Yeah, 2014. So like Instagram wasn't what it is today. I mean, at the time I probably could have just become an online dietitian, but I kind of do more of that stuff now. But anyways, I was a personal trainer, just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I actually ended up having an injury that sent me to a chiropractor. And I had a good friend at the time who was in chiropractic school. And the chiropractor put my x-rays up and just explained to me the power of chiropractic and how it's so much more. I thought it was just sort of like getting like a facial or just like a feel good. Oh, you can adjust it and it's whatever. But I did not realize how powerful it was. I mean, it affects everything. It can affect your digestion, your sleep, your hormones. So he put my x-rays up, explained to me all of that stuff, blew my mind. And I thought about it every day for about 6 months and then said, okay, I just need to go become a chiropractor.
Yeah, well, that's a big commitment.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. But I mean, being in chiropractic school is what led me to eating meat again and becoming a carnivore. So, it all worked out.
So how do you incorporate nutrition and your recommendations into your practice now?
So for the most part, I keep it mostly just chiropractic in the office. I definitely talk to people, about their diet and about nutrition and things like that. And I'll give them, little handouts or suggestions when they're in the office. But I keep most of my dietetic stuff I do online. So I'm doing like an online carnivore diet program. And especially since all of the Corona stuff hit and we've been in quarantine, kind of forced lots of things to be moved online. So I can do dietetic services, in person for people who are in Nashville, but I also now just do it mostly electronically through Zoom calls, do online diet coaching, and then carnivore online program. And then in my office is mostly just chiropractic.
Okay. And so you recently haven't lived here that long, right?
Yeah, I just moved here last January. I came from Southern California. Okay. I'm grateful to not be there right now with all this quarantine happening.
What made you choose Nashville?
It's funny. It was kind of random. I didn't even know one person that lived here when I moved here. It was time to get out of California. Just things were starting to happen. It's getting more and more expensive and crowded and all of that stuff. So I was just sort of choosing a spot on the map, and I had some friends who loved Nashville, raved about it. So I came out for a visit, fell in love with it by the end of that weekend, and just decided to go for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up here, and then I lived in California for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I came back.
Yeah. Nice.
So I understand all sides.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some questions that people talk about in the carnivore community. So some people say you have to be 100% carnivore to be considered a carnivore. Or how much percentage or amount of plants can you get away with and still call yourself a carnivore?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for me, I think that depends a lot on why you are choosing to come to this lifestyle. So why you are coming to a carnivore diet. If someone is coming to carnivore looking to heal like autoimmune conditions, there's, tons of people who have had huge success healing things like rheumatoid arthritis or chronic gut issues, ulcerative colitis, IBS, all of those kinds of things. So if you're coming to this diet with more serious health concerns, then I would say stay as strict as you can. As far as like labeling goes, if you can still call yourself a carnivore, I mean, whatever, people can choose whatever label they want. But if you're doing this diet more for just, you just want to improve little things in your health, but you don't have any like serious diagnoses or health conditions going on, then I think you can get away with being a little more carnivore-ish. And that's kind of what I do. I stay about 90% carnivore. So most of my days are carnivore. Sometimes like if I'm going out with friends, if we're going to go out and like get tacos, then like I'll have a taco with a tortilla on it, and I'll have whatever like vegetables come inside the taco or like but I always keep it gluten-free because that really affects my health. And like I get brain fog from eating gluten. So it's not even a digestive issue with me. It's mostly symptoms in my brain and like how I think and interact with the world. So I will always keep it gluten-free because that's how I feel best. But, we're all human. I think it's important to find a good balance of what's going to work, in your lifestyle and for your health. So if you need to stay, 100% strict to heal, and there's a lot of people who come to it for Lyme disease as well. So for a lot of people, if they're dealing with chronic Lyme, if they eat, one little leaf of lettuce or something, then their symptoms all come back. So for those people, yes, it's so important to stay as strict as you can. Yeah, but as far as if it's just like a healthy lifestyle type of a thing, I think you have a little more leeway. But for me, I try to stay carnivore at least 5 days a week. And even if 2 days a week, if I'm having something that's not carnivore, most of my day is still carnivore. So I'll still have a carnivore lunch and it's just something for dinner or a little treat at the end of the night. I'll have some chocolate or something like that.
So it's still a really small percentage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. The most vegetables I'll ever eat now is if they're on top of a gluten-free pizza or inside of a a steak taco.
A big ass salad or something.
Yeah, I can't tell you the last time I ate a salad, and I do not miss them at all.
The other night it was really hot here, and I put some tuna fish inside of one piece of lettuce, and that whole night I was having terrible leg cramps.
Oh my God.
A little bit of lettuce that was romaine lettuce. I'm geez, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be fun because it was so hot and it reminded me, it was crunchy and cold and
right. Yeah.
So
wild.
No, but one thing you said was about going with your friends and stuff, and one of the things I always think about during this time that we've been told to stay at home and everything, is finding that balance between going crazy and community. Being so worried. I mean, it comes with a carnivore too. It's how do you make it work with your family or with your friends and not make yourself crazy orthorexic, freaking out about every bite,
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I think a great thing to do too, especially if you're someone who needs to stay super strict, or if you're in the beginning stages of it, and you're trying to figure it out, a great thing to do, I think, is just eat before you go out, so make a nice big steak before you go out. And then if whatever restaurant you're at, most restaurants have a hamburger or something that you can just get a plain hamburger patty, so that way you're still participating in the meal and interacting with people, but not having to, completely throw it all out the window and order a salad or, eat a bunch of wheat or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So what do you think about vitamin C and people, especially during this time too, people are like, well, I need more. I mean, all the natural health people are like, vitamin C, vitamin C, vitamin C. And then, I mean, of course, zinc, which you already mentioned, which we get that. We get plenty of that.
Yeah.
Did that worry you? I mean, especially coming from a registered dietitian, did you nervous about the vitamin C or lack thereof?
Yeah. I mean, 5 years ago, if you would have asked me that question, I would have been like, yeah, that's insane. Carnivore diet, you would never get any vitamin C, you know? But it's so crazy to me the more that I kind of dive further into this world and we're looking into the research of things, in that, like, we knew way back in the day that scurvy was healed by eating fresh meat. And the sailors, so like, yes, they could bring oranges on the ship, or they could also bring fresh meat. Because the problem was that the sailors were eating meat that was all heavily like dehydrated or super salted. And so it was preserved and stored for long periods of time. And so that's why they were developing scurvy. And vitamin C and glucose compete for absorption in our gut, which we also know. So if you're not eating sugar or glucose, and you're eating fresh meat, then all the vitamin C that you're taking in from the meat is going to be absorbed into your body. And I mean, all of the benefits that you get too, just from being low carbohydrate and not, having your insulin being in regular levels and not being, having spikes of insulin or crazy drops or things like that. Just being metabolically healthy is going to be so much more advantageous than worrying about if you need to be eating more oranges for vitamin C during this time. So I'm not concerned about it because I know that my body's absorbing all the vitamin C that I'm getting from fresh meat sources, and we know that there's some in there. If you look on the USDA's website, it probably won't list it because they never tested for it. So it's not that there's none in there; it's just that we never even looked for it in the meat.
And we have this really high idea that we think that it has to be this very high number because of everyone's on a high carb diet, so they have to have much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when they did all of the testing to find out what the RDAs were, they did that based on a high carbohydrate diet.
Now, there's a lot of people lately are saying that, well, I don't know, it's a lot, but some of my friends or whatever are saying they're having trouble with their macros, or they're having trouble because I think that the idea is don't track on carnivore, just eat. And do you see any problems with your clients about they're getting too much protein, or they're not feeling well even after the adaptation period if they don't have enough fat, or they're too much protein or too much fat, or vice versa?
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of conversation around that in this world. I agree. For me, I've always loved the more intuitive eating approach. So that's always how I take it. I don't like having to like track and measure every single bite that goes into my mouth or what I'm eating, or, weighing things or this and that. I've never been a fan of that, even before I was carnivore. So I really prefer just to take the intuitive approach. So if people are eating and they're not feeling good, then we'll just kind of take a general look at, okay, well, is all of your ground beef 90-10 and you're choosing, like you're not eating ribeyes, you're eating like super lean cuts, or you're eating a lot of chicken, or, anything like that, then I'll be like, okay, probably a good idea to put some more fat in your diet. So choose 80-20 ground beef instead of 90-10 and see how you feel. I don't like to live my life measuring everything, every little speck of everything. So I don't think people need to live that way if they just learn to tune into their bodies. So making sure you get enough salt, just salt your steak heavily and see how you feel. I don't think you need to like measure it out, teaspoon by teaspoon to see what you're doing. So yeah, I'm just a big fan of eating, seeing how you feel, and then taking that data and moving from there. So I don't keep track really of my, like how much protein I'm eating or how much fat I'm eating, but I do focus on getting enough fat. So like when I get ground beef, it's mostly 80-20. And the steaks that I eat are ribeyes, and I try to eat as much fat as I can off of them. That's one thing. People are kind of weird about the texture in steak fat, I think, at first, which I was too. in the beginning. I feel like you get better at it, over time. The more that you eat it, the more tasty it is. But what I'll do, a good like trick for this, is you cut off a piece of like a super muscly bite, and then cut off a little chunk of the fat, and you put it on top of it, and then you eat them together.
Yeah.
So you're kind of creating your own marbling to eat more of the fat.
Too. I'm like, and then sometimes I'll eat about half of it, and then I'll put it back in because I hate it cold. So that will crisp up the fat often on that second heating of the.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Now you talked a little bit about electrolytes, so I feel like that's, to me, more of a problem when I talk to people than the fat issue. I mean, of course, we're brainwashed into thinking we need to cut all the fat off of everything, and so they could be doing that, not even realizing it. But I find that the biggest thing is the salt. Like, they don't have enough salt, and I don't even think, I think they should just try regular salt first. I mean, not regular salt, but it's good sea salt.
Yeah.
And before they even worry about potassium and all the other, calcium and, the other electrolytes, just get the salt first, and then they can always tweak it. But I feel like for me, for everyone I've ever started on the carnivore diet, which, is mostly just through their Instagram, is that their problem is salt. And now I don't think they have to measure it, but I usually think they're not getting enough. But what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a fan of just making sure you're using enough salt and salting your food enough before you try or feel like you need to go towards like electrolyte supplements or anything like that. So what I do, a good little trick to kind of get some more salt in, is I always start my morning with the like 16 ounces of salt water. So I just make it before I go to bed, and I just put it, on my nightstand or in my bathroom. So I chug it first thing in the morning. So I do just 16 ounces of water with half a teaspoon of salt. So I'll do that, and I just drink that first thing in the morning, and then salt my steaks heavily. Put some salt on my ground beef if I'm feeling like I need extra. But yeah, I totally agree. Just start with salt. Make sure you're salting enough. If you're feeling lethargic or tired or dizzy or anything like that, any sort of those keto flu symptoms, just add more salt and go from there.
Yeah, I think people aren't in tune enough, because like whenever I'm feeling tired, I mean, I have to remind myself like, oh, take some salt first before you reach for something else, like, and then, yeah, it's usually that, because it'll be, and also if you feel like you drink a whole bunch of water, but you're still thirsty, that's the salt calling you.
Yes. Yep. It's telling you. Yeah. Well, and really interesting thing too, that I read this in The Salt Fix by Dr. Dinick. He's got a really long last name, but Dinick, they'll find it. So what was really fascinating about that too is he talks about how you can use salt to quell your sugar cravings. So because when your body does not have enough salt, it increases the reward pathway for salt. But the problem is that it just increases basically all reward pathways. So that means that salt is going to taste better to you, yes, because your body's trying to get you to eat more of it, but also sugar is going to taste better to you. And if you have any addictive tendencies, so like if you were ever addicted to drugs or alcohol, those things are going to light up your reward pathway more as well, just by not having enough salt in your diet.
Wow.
Which is, yeah, so crazy. So make sure you have enough salt, and then the sugar reward pathway will be dampened because you have enough salt. Your body's not trying to get more in. And I mean, even, if you have like addictive tendencies, it can help with those as well.
That's kind of reminds me of, I'm sure you've talked to a million women who are like obsessed with tortilla chips and stuff like that. It's the salt that they're wanting.
Yeah.
And even on a standard American diet, they probably need it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I'm sure that's what he says, that everybody needs it, right?
Yep.
I never read that book, but I've heard of it.
Oh, yeah. It's really good.
Okay, so now, what do you think about the whole liver thing and other organ meats and nose to tail and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I find that whenever I can get more liver into my diet, my skin looks so much better. So for me, like the organ meats really affect my skin in a really good way. So, I mean, do people have to eat organ meats on a carnivore diet? I mean, that's debatable. You know, there's people who've been on a carnivore diet for 20 plus years, not eating organ meats, and they're doing okay. But if you can manage to get them in, it's like, why not? It's extra, you know, vitamins coming in essentially. And I always tell people too, if they want to take a multivitamin, I say just eat beef liver. You don't need to take a multi, just eat that. But I will say, I do think that liver is pretty gross. So I've done my best to try to eat it in all the different ways. You know, you can slice it up and just like shoot it down like a pill. You know, there was that frozen liver gang thing that was going around for a while. I tried that. It was so gross. So I take ancestral supplements. So they have the beef organs, so they just come in little capsules that you can just take down. I'm also really bad at swallowing pills though. So I just break open the capsules and I just mix it into my ground beef.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I do that for the most part.
Expensive ground beef on earth.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's also like US Wellness Meats, which you can order grass-fed beef online. They have a ground beef that's mixed with liver, heart, and kidney. So I'll order that also, and then it's just mixed in with the ground beef.
That's a good idea.
But yeah, and that's what I always recommend too. If anyone has eczema, I've seen a lot of great results with people, even if they're not going to go carnivore. But if they're having eczema, if they just add liver into their diet, a lot of times that can clear it up really quickly.
Now, I know, I mean, on your Instagram, you're working out like all the time. So there's this idea that you have to have carbs for working out. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, based on results, don't have to. Yeah, so I mean, like I said, when I first went carnivore, I mean, I was gaining muscle, no problem. My workouts were great. Now, if someone is an elite athlete or, you know, they're training for the Olympics or something like that, I mean, yeah, like in the middle of training, if you found something that works for you, like maybe not the best time to transition to carnivore. You know, I'm not an expert in like sports nutrition. I just don't choose to focus on that. But there are carnivores who can do, you know, athletic events and do great. It's just that you need to get through that transition period first. But I mean, yeah, there's plenty of people.
Don't start carnivore on your first Ironman.
Yeah, exactly. That's not the time to transition. Yeah, but I mean, I feel so great. I mean, carbs just make me tired. Like if I eat them now, I just get so tired. It's not even worth it. So I get so much more energy just from eating meat, being able to work out that way. The best pre-workout you could do would just be salt water. You know, like we were talking about, if you're feeling tired or lethargic, just down some salt, chug some water, and you're typically good to go. But yeah, I think that's a myth that we need carbohydrates to be very physically active.
Oh yeah. I mean, talk about bonking. Like I used to run half marathons, and I mean, every 30 to 40 minutes, I mean, I would completely crash. You know, it's like you have to have sugar. I mean, or you just stop. You just have to fall down or something. I mean, it's crazy. Like that never happens to me now. I mean, not that I'm doing that, but
yeah.
Okay, this one's sort of controversial, but a lot of people ask me, like, when they're breastfeeding or they're pregnant, what if it's safe to do carnivore? And I mean, of course, you don't have to answer.
Yeah, well, you know, of course, always consult your doctor. That's a good liability waiver there. So we're just talking. This is not medical advice for anyone listening. But I mean, there are many women who are thriving on carnivore, being able to, you know, breastfeed and go through their entire pregnancy as carnivore as well. I don't have any kids, so I haven't done that myself yet. But I mean, if and when I do get pregnant, I imagine I would stay carnivore. I don't see any reason why not. I actually just recently found there's a Facebook group that's all about like carnivore diet and breastfeeding. So I just joined that Facebook group recently. So there's a lot of conversations going on in there of women who, yeah, they're having a great time on it. But again, that's one of those things where I wouldn't necessarily, if you like just had a baby and you were not carnivore for your whole pregnancy, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend transitioning in during that time, just because your body's going through so many different changes. It may or may not be the ideal time. But again, that's just one of those things where you can kind of figure out with your own body. Maybe try it, you know, for 3, 4, 5 days, see how you feel. But if you're like struggling with supply and your supply is going down, then probably not the best time to transition, right? Your body's just not ready to make those changes. So I would just, wait until the baby is weaning and then maybe try to transition from there.
Yeah. And I mean, I think everyone can do like a lower carb diet or, a paleo diet or low carb paleo or something like that, because I mean, it's just going to help with pregnancy and breastfeeding if you get all those all the gluten and the vegetable oils and all that stuff. So I mean, anybody can do that, and that's a big improvement over the standard American diet. So
yeah,
and
definitely.
It's probably not gonna. You could still do it Dr. McGetrick style with the carbs if you're scared
yeah,
of going down or something. But my sister's actually been carnivore for 2 years, and she has been breastfeeding for 2 years. So
nice. Yeah.
So she can't get her kid to stop breastfeeding. I mean, he doesn't do much, but like before bed, and once you have that automatic thing where you can just get to, like, you just put them to sleep and they love it, and it's just like hard to stop, when it makes them sleep and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You got to find what works and go with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there some other issues you want to bring up or anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. I think we covered most of the things.
So you have a carnivore course. What do you cover in that?
Yeah, so I have it's a 5-week course. It's called Heal Your Body. And I basically go through, like, the first week is a how-to of the carnivore diet. So how, to go through it, to do it. I've got a little food pyramid in there, what's included, what's not included, all of the things in there. And then over the following weeks, we go through just sort of some of the science behind it, because I'm sure, when you go carnivore, all your friends and family look at you like you're crazy and ask you a million questions. So we go through, why this diet is working, how it's working. And then at the end, I also include a module of how to reintroduce foods. So if people, want to be more carnivore-ish and not be necessarily carnivore forever, I kind of go through the best practices for that. Because I love using the carnivore diet as an elimination diet. It's one of the easiest ways to do it. Because many elimination diets are very confusing. There's like this list of vegetables you can have, but these vegetables you can't have. And, you have to like memorize all of these different things. It can be maddening.
Done it all.
Yeah. Yeah. So with carnivore, it's easy. It's just don't eat any fruits and vegetables, eat nothing but meat. Boom, there you go. And so I love using it as that elimination diet. So for people who have any food sensitivities or, autoimmune conditions, anything like that, you can really start to figure out for yourself what affects your body versus what doesn't affect it as much. And you don't have to necessarily go through all of the, testing and blood work and everything like that. You can just figure it out on your own. So I have a whole module that goes over, how to reintroduce foods, how to figure out if you're sensitive to foods and things like that. So I have that is the online program. And then I also do just like one-on-one coaching if people want, more support going into a carnivore diet as well.
So is your online coaching like videos? Is it like self-led, or do you lead them through it?
So the course is self-led. So it's like one module per week and they go through that. And I have a workout program designed into it as well. So I do the online yoga classes. So I have a bunch of yoga classes that are included in there also. So that is self-led, the online program, but then the one-on-one coaching is like weekly Zoom calls and, check-ins and more one-on-one support that way.
And you also teach classes around town, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I was teaching at Core Power Yoga in Nashville, before Corona, but now all the studios are closed. So right now I'm teaching on my Instagram. So I do Instagram live classes, Monday through Thursday mornings. And then I have like bundles of classes people can purchase online, so they can just log in and take them whenever they want to. But yeah, hopefully, when the world opens up again, I'll be teaching in the studio at Core Power. But that's all kind of up in the air right now.
Yeah, we have some stuff open, but not everything. So That's good. I went to TJ Maxx yesterday, so that was like the
Oh,
highlight of my year.
yeah.
But anyway, so tell everybody where they can find all of your information.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. So it's at Dr McGetrick. So it's Dr. period and then my last name McGetrick is my Instagram. So that's where I'm doing all of like Instagram live yoga classes and everything like that. My carnivore program website is Carnivore Country. So it's carnivorecountry.com. And yeah, those are the two places where I show up the most.
And if people want a local chiropractor, where's your chiropractic office?
Yeah, my office is in Music Row, so it's right in between Vanderbilt and Belmont here in Nashville, Tennessee. And my office is called Evergreen Chiropractic. So that's the name of my office over there on 16th Avenue.
Cool. And I'll link to her stuff all below in the description box, so you guys don't have to look everywhere. And I have a link to US Wellness Meats down in the description box if you want to get that. I love also the 75/25 ground beef they have. It's more
yeah.
and it's hard to find fatty ground beef. So
yeah,
well, awesome getting to know you, and hopefully we can get together. We should have like a carnivore meetup whenever we can go to somewhere again.
Yes, definitely.
Just meet in the park with we'll just bring a bunch of meat to some kind of pavilion or something.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, I look forward to meeting you in real life, and we'll keep in touch. And everybody, please like this video. Please subscribe, share with a friend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.